Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the October edition of the Penn State IAEM Student Chapter Meeting. Sam, I don't know if you have any particular business to tell everybody tonight. We have a couple of interesting people with us tonight, but before we get into that, next month's meeting will be at the same time as the IAEM annual conference, which I am going to, and barring anything that I might have to do that evening, I was going to Zoom from the conference center and kind of give a state of the conference and what I've seen and what I've done, and just, boots on the ground information for anyone who's interested in the conference.
You need to wear a GoPro and walk around.
That's right. That's right. I need some Google glasses is what I really need. So that's next month. We will not be having a meeting for December because it's very close to the holiday season and everyone will be off doing their thing. So we will, after next month, we will resume in January. So stay tuned for that. Tonight, we are joined by Ryan Ford and Gary Spector, who are working at the Emergency Operations Center for the City of Philadelphia. So more than that, I will let them introduce themselves and what they do. Ryan,
Thanks,
welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. We're excited to present to you all tonight. I'll just do a brief introduction, and it sounds like JD will talk about kind of our backgrounds a little bit in a second. Is that okay?
Please.
Yeah, so I've been with the city's Office of Emergency Management for 8 years next month. So I started in 2014, originally as a regional integration, which is our watch office, regional integration center coordinator, and I've been in a position as a program manager here for the Homeland Security program for about just over 6 years. Gary?
Yeah, so not only do I work for the city of Philadelphia, I have the honor and pleasure of working for Ryan Ford as well. So I just did that so because it was on recording, so it's documented. But so I've been with the office for about 2 years and some change. I came in specifically to work with the vaccine program. So when the city of Philadelphia was setting up its large vaccine sites, I started kind of my purview into Philly OEM through that way. And then I was fortunate enough to switch over to the Homeland team to be the Homeland Security Planning Coordinator under Ryan. So it's a 2-man team, but we certainly accomplished a lot. So I'll kick it back to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Gary. JD, go ahead.
No, just tell us about how you got into this, how you got into emergency management a bit, and how you got your jobs in emergency management.
So I'll go first, and then Gary kind of share his path to OEM. So I graduated high school here in Pennsylvania, Fleetwood High School, which is in Berks County, close to Reading or Kutztown University, for those that are familiar with the state. But I knew coming into my senior year that I wanted nothing more to do with school. I was sick of it, and so I went right into the Army. And, I signed the papers my senior year, and not that I was a bad student or unmotivated. I was just kind of ready to do something else, and go out and do something else besides sit in a classroom for a couple more years. So I actually went into the Army just after September 11th, 2001. And, I spent 4 years in the Army as part of a tank crew, as an armored crewman. And so that means, being part of an M1A1 or M1A2 tank crew. So I was a loader and a driver, and then became a gunner, and did that for 4 years, which included kind of basic training in Fort Knox, Kentucky, being stationed in Germany, deployed to Iraq from there, coming back to Germany, and then spending my last 1.5 years in the Army, at Fort Knox as kind of cadre in a training unit. So I absolutely love my time in the Army. It got me out of the classroom and away from small town Fleetwood, Pennsylvania. But after 4 years, I was kind of ready to, again, to try something else. I had really no idea what I wanted to study, but I did know that thanks to Uncle Sam and the GI Bill, I had a pot of money to spend here. So I went to school at Westchester University, and I focused in political science. Kind of stuck with that through my career, or through my time at Westchester. And I took different internships. I'm still not really sure what I was going to do with this degree, other than the fact that, I'd been involved with, some current events, obviously, in my time in the Army and my deployment, and seeing international relations kind of unfold. And so I really like that international relations piece. And I was talking to my advisor. I was coming through kind of the last piece of my time or my last semester at Westchester. And I said, I really don't know what I'm still going to do with this degree after I graduate here in a couple of months. She said, well, just go try a different internship and go try a different, an internship somewhere else. So I looked around, I saw one with the Red Cross here in Philadelphia. And I applied for that. And originally I applied for a public relations internship. And thankfully, I got redirected after they kind of looked at my experience in the Army and what my interests were, and said, why don't you, we have this position open in emergency communications. During your time in the Army, you mentioned that you spent some time in, working with radios and in Army terminology, the Tactical Operations Center for our unit when we were deployed. It's kind of like the hub of where everything gets coordinated out of for our battalion. So we have this emergency communications center or desk that you might be a good fit for. And so I started doing that as an internship, which led into kind of a part-time job after the internship was done. But that was really my first introduction into, one, that there even was a field of emergency management or disaster management. The supervisor I had at the time, Steve Michelson, really said, there's a whole career path out here for it. If you kind of like this type of work, or you might be interested in it, go ahead and start looking around at other emergency management programs, which were, I think at that time in 2006 or so, 2007, we're still relatively new and not nearly as, I think, popular or mature as they've become since then. But so I took him up on his offer, and I started looking around and looking into careers in emergency management and disaster services. And I found a program online through University of North Carolina, Community Preparedness and Disaster Management. It was a 1-year graduate certificate program. And the courses that I took specific to that program, I just completely nerded out on. I really liked the different aspects. It was a good sampling of different career paths in emergency management. And during that 1-year program, I ended up moving. I graduated from Westchester University, still worked at the Red Cross. Once I finished school at Westchester, I started this 1-year program, and in the process moved down to Florida, to the Tampa Bay, Clearwater area, if anybody's familiar with that part. And again, used that kind of emergency communications experience, both from the Army and now with the Red Cross, to get a job down in Pinellas County, Florida, as a 911 dispatcher for the county. And so to kind of shorten this up a little bit, I finished the program with University of North Carolina, decided I wanted to continue down this road of either emergency communications, emergency management, something in the public safety realm of that nature. I used the rest of my GI Bill to enroll in University of South Florida with their Master's of Public Administration. It worked out really nicely with my schedule at 911. So I did 911 at night, and my classes were all in the evening right before my night shift. So I wrapped that up in 2013. And then I took some time off from work, moved back up here to Pennsylvania, and used again that emergency communications background to get my foot in the door here with OEM in Philadelphia as part of the watch office. And then once I was here for about a year and a half, when I first started, I had no idea that this whole kind of blend or intersection between emergency management and homeland security even existed, or to the degree that it does here with Philadelphia OEM. But the opportunity came up, and I was promoted into this homeland security program manager role. So that was kind of my progression from having no idea in high school what I was going to do, having no idea in college what I wanted to do outside of international relations was cool, finding a career field in emergency management and taking kind of more of an emergency communications path to where I'm at today as a program manager.
Outstanding. Did you get certified in emergency management through IAEM or anything like that?
So I've been a member of IAEM for a while, but I'm actually just now going through the process of getting the certification. So I am in the throes of it and working my way through.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. So honestly, we can talk about this a little bit more in detail if the group is interested, but it was kind of one of those items in the back of my mind that, on a rainy day, maybe I'll get around to it. And, obviously 2020 being what it was with COVID, 2021, just as busy for us here in Philadelphia with a lot of other different events going on, plus COVID still existing. 2022, knock on wood, hopefully is I'm using it as a time to while we have the chance to catch our breath, to do some of these things that I've kind of had on the back burner for a while and probably should have. So I'm in the mix of it.
Outstanding. Gary, your turn.
It's funny that Ryan is choosing now as the time to catch up when the Philadelphia Eagles are 6-0 and the Flyers are about to go to the World Series. So we're not catching a break. We're in the this week of planning, the Phillies NLCS games this weekend. So
that's awesome. Congratulations.
Much of a break Ryan gets. So for me, much like Ryan, I didn't really know what direction to go post high school. So being that I have lots of family in Israel and I'm Jewish, I decided at 17 to leave New York, where I was born and raised, and join the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF. I spent some time there. As similar with Ryan, it certainly, I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot, not only about skills, but also about myself. So, that military background certainly assisted me, but then came out of the military life and said, what is this civilian world that I'm supposed to make do with? I liked the action of the military, so while applying to different schools, I took an EMT course, and that was kind of my first step into emergency services. Going into school, I went from New York City, where I got my EMT certificate, to Lancaster County, PA, quite a change from New York to Israel to Amish country. But I attended Franklin Marshall College out in Lancaster County, and I loved every second of it. It was a great opportunity. I studied political science. I put my EMT skills to use by working for a local EMS agency, and then I thought I'd make my mother as worried as possible, so I decided to go to the fire academy, where I got my Fire 1 cert, and worked also at a fire company down in Lancaster County while attending school. So, all of that, I had all of those experiences. I went through college. I graduated with a BA in political science, and still did not really know what I wanted to do. But I took advantages of some professors that I had some close connections with, and just, kind of really picked their brains about what their experiences were. And used contacts that they gave me that they think might guide me, and one of which did. They provided me kind of a contact of a contact, to where I got an internship with Lancaster County Emergency Management Agency, which is quite a small EM, but small but mighty. A lot of what they do surrounds the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant, since they're within the EPZ there. So I got a history lesson about the 3 Mile Island meltdown, but I also got my first, purview into emergency management. So I did that internship for about 5 months. And then I used another contact that I had met, that somebody had given me, to have coffee with somebody who worked for New York City government, which then launched me into an internship with New York City Emergency Management, where I did, I was an intern for the logistics team there. And I was very fortunate that a position opened up during my internship, applied, and there I found myself on the supply chain logistics team. Our team primarily did heavy machinery, fuel operations for emergency services, generator dewatering operations. Obviously, I was in New York City Emergency Management post-Sandy era, so everything was hurricane related. And how do we make sure that doesn't happen again? I don't know if we figured it out, but we certainly wrote plans that tried. So, I was there for 3.5 years. I experienced some big operations there, but the biggest being COVID. We were there in the EOC during, the first kind of hits of COVID. And I joke with kind of people within the EM sphere. My early days of COVID, I went and bought a hotel in LaGuardia, out by LaGuardia Airport. That was my assignment. We really didn't know much. We just know we needed some space. So my goal was, with a New York City credit card, to go out and get a hotel. So I did. And now, all in retrospect, a tiny hotel is the smallest that we needed. But I did a lot of beyond that within COVID. I worked on the team that put all of the morgue trucks at every single hospital in New York City. And then coming down to Philly, was hated because I was the guy that stole all the morgue trucks from them. And the reason they couldn't buy any on the Northeast is because we purchased every single one of them. The benefit of working for a big city. So, in the first summer of COVID, I certainly had my experiences through New York City, but through a life change with my partner, we were looking to move down to the Philadelphia area. I used another contact who, gave me insight into the Philadelphia, not only the area, but OEM as well. And I said, hey, why not? So I came down under the COVID Cares Act, which provided local EMs a bunch, funding to fill positions. And my role was specific to vaccine planning. So they cut me loose with a car and, a notepad in Philadelphia and said, go find vaccine sites, to which we did successfully find lots, which was, both success for the mission, but also taught me a fair amount about the city. And I did that for about 6 or 7 months, time's a blur. But then I had the opportunity to work during the 2020 elections with Ryan and the Homeland team, when Philadelphia was counting its votes at the Pennsylvania Convention Center, which was, obviously the center point of a very high stress election cycle. So, worked with Ryan and, learned about the Homeland Security Planning Coordinator role, and decided to put my hat in the ring, and was, fortunate to get selected in that. So, I think that there is, to wrap this up with a bow, or at least attempt to, each step is kind of, not necessarily pre-planned or linear for that matter. I think I used contacts at every, juncture, not necessarily knowing where that contact would lead me. I think I'm thankful that I wrote those emails and asked for coffee, even with a total stranger, mostly because they necessarily, not necessarily that they did what I wanted to do, but that they could introduce me to different areas of other parts of emergency management. So, that was my attempt at wrapping it with a bow. We'll see if it was successful or not. But yeah, I mean, that's really my story. I've been in Ryan's team for about, I guess, 1.5 years, Ryan, I don't know, something like that. And my portfolio mostly revolves around special events. That's why, with the Phillies moving on and the Eagles doing so well, we're a little nervous. From 2008 and whenever the Eagles won the Super Bowl last, the city nearly burned down. So it's our job to kind of make sure that doesn't happen again. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my story in a nutshell, and just a kind of preview of what my portfolio looks like. So JD, I'll kick it back to you, or if there's any questions.
Well, I mean, that,
Oh, sorry,
Go
JD.
for it. No, go for it.
I was just gonna say, when you were in New York, did you work with John Scrivani?
I did, yeah.
So I think this is the first time we have ever had two completely unrelated Penn State guest speakers cross paths. He
That's funny.
spoke to our students a few months ago, and actually he talked a lot about when he was in New York, like the first time, and the mortuary affair. So when you were talking about the morgue trucks, that's kind of what pinged it for me.
He
That's
was the morgue
interesting.
king. He was the morgue king then. We certainly had plenty of good meetings where we had to reinvent the wheel. I mean, New York City Emergency Management certainly provided assistance to an overwhelmed chief medical examiner, understandably so. And he came in from down in Virginia, and was a phenomenal asset to the city and really did great work. So it's funny. I'm glad I can be part of this coincidence.
All right, go for it, JD.
So, so many questions. Where to begin? Ryan, emergency communications.
Yes.
I'm a ham. I'm in the ham radio. So, I mean, was there any ham tie-ins while you were doing emergency communications?
I have not been in the ham world myself, but I do remember when I worked with Pinellas County, the emergency operations center at the time was co-located or right adjacent to our 911 center where I worked, and there was a small portion of the Pinellas County EOC, if I remember right, that was dedicated to ham operators and had all the equipment for that. They have since moved to a new facility. I haven't even thought to ask anybody down there if they kind of brought that with them, but I was just kind of thought that it was a neat plug-in for it, that they had a dedicated base for it.
So what did your MCOM consist of?
So going back from kind of my start, really, with the military, the emergency or emergency communications piece was really located around being an RTO, radio. I forget what the T stands for, radio telecom operator, radio telephone operator. And it was an additional duty for us. So we took shifts in our tactical operations center. And it wasn't anything fancy like we have, today with, internet enabled computers and all different kinds of software systems and GIS interfaces. It was really a map on a wall, placing your units roughly where they were on the map on the wall, and tracking unit movement, and any needs that came in would then be resourced at the talk and pushed out. So that was kind of the get-go, or my first introduction to it. And I still wanted to be a tanker, and every chance I got, not be in the tactical operations center, but be out working on a tank. But in hindsight, there's very little civilian application for being a tank crewman, but much more civilian application for an emergency communications. So obviously with the Red Cross, it was really just getting in contact with volunteers and directing them to the right location, and making sure that the people that were displaced or whatever the need was, we were directing support specifically there. And then really with the 911 center down in Florida, and then with Philly OEM here with our regional integration center, the watch office, it was much more multitasking. We had, the public safety radio bands, all the things that you would think of in an EOC or a watch office, kind of plugging in and filtering into one room, and coordinating around that. So that's been kind of the extent, but I was never really too deep into the technical aspects or the technical components of, what made the systems work, so on and so forth.
Right. I don't want to dominate all the questions. So if anyone has a question, please pipe in. I'm just fascinated. So let's take COVID, for example. I know that's been so overwhelming on so many fronts. What kind of lessons has that taught you that will translate to other aspects or disciplines of emergency management? It's kind of any global lessons learned there?
Gary, you want
This
to
is
take
for
that
both
first?
you and Gary.
It's a big one, so I'll try. I think just personally, being a young emergency manager and kind of my first and hopefully my last, global pandemic and or, incident of that scale. I don't want to say that it was a learning experience and that was a positive for me. I think I learned a lot in that. I think that the lesson learned for emergency managers is just kind of what we've been telling ourselves as part of our identity is versatility and adaptability. And I think it truly proved that those things are where we provide value. We had to write plans. We had to throw the plan out first and then write them on the fly. And I think that this was for at least up in New York and then, coming to do vaccines in Philly.
So I take it the plans you had just didn't work? Is that why you threw them out?
Yeah, and I think the variables were just beyond the scale that we've could ever, factor in for, and just the consistently changing data. So, I think that to remain at the 35 or 40,000 foot view, I think that the lesson is that the challenge is we are a very challenge agnostic profession, and I think that a lot of the tools that we've had success with are applicable beyond just one specific incident. And Ryan and I we deal with that with special events. We set plans and then something happens where for example, like the July 4th, I don't know if everybody heard, there was an incident during the July 4th festival. We have a Ben Franklin Parkway. It's a big firework event. Nonetheless, there was an incident. And the versatility of the young emergency managers on our command post on that day, adjusting on the fly, adjusting to consistently changing information very quickly. And having to not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but be creative in their response. So it's a non-answer in that case. Hopefully that was what you were looking for.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, I think for everyone, just speaking from my experience, when I thought about emergency management when I was going to school, either at University of South Florida or North Carolina, kind of learning about it in the textbooks and hearing from the experiences of other professors and guest lecturers, it's thinking that I would be involved in like a global pandemic, just wasn't something that fit normally or like something that would just naturally come to my mind as something that, I'd play a role in it, if I had the chance to be, part of it, the emergency management field one day. But I think once we saw COVID-19 unfolding, our office, and I think probably much like many other emergency management offices, really, as Gary mentioned before, had to kind of rethink their positions in the office, rethink, traditional structures and so on and so forth. And, we organized our emergency operations center and our own staff internally around specific functions and around specific tasks that need to happen daily, whether it was, finding different locations and building out these different locations as surge capacity for hospitals, or morgue sites, or all the logistics that comes behind that. And personally, I got kind of placed in the planning section for the initial couple months of COVID. And that's not a role that I traditionally play. There is a certain amount of planning that Gary and I do for special events and that sort of thing. But, to serve as a planning section chief for about 2.5 months or 3 months or so for that initial period, I had a rough idea and kind of figured it out as you go, but just staying flexible and going back to the kind of the basics of problem solving and building relationships and drawing on the network that you already have to get things done, I think kind of was the bread and butter for us and a lot of other organizations, I would imagine.
So in building those relationships, have you leaned on the IAEM at all in terms of leveraging the contacts through there at all? Has that helped at all?
So not, I can't speak, for the whole office, obviously, but I haven't used IAEM, but I know there are several other networks, whether it's an individual's own professional network or other networks that are kind of better organized or specific to emergency management. Yeah, we drew on support, with the demands that we had in our time and the time that was available in the day and very long days, initially in COVID. Yeah, drawing on those pre-existing relationships that you have. One that I used and one that I think we continue to lean on is a program that our office is pretty active with, is the Naval Postgraduate School Center for Homeland Defense and Security. So at the time, I had just finished the master's program through the Naval Postgraduate School, and some of my colleagues across the country, some of them were on the West Coast where COVID had kind of initially made its first appearance in the U.S. So talking to those colleagues up in the Pacific Northwest and getting their initial, reading on it, whenever they had a spare moment, was kind of helpful to get a sense of what we might be dealing with in a week or 2 weeks. So that's just one example, but I'm sure other people in my office had other networks. Not to say IEM wasn't one of them, but for me, I just the contacts through the Naval Postgraduate School were a little bit more immediate and well established at that time.
Any other questions out there? Again, I don't want to dominate. So with just the two of you, how are you? I mean, I guess you might have just answered it, but I mean, how are y'all handling the two sports events coming up that could be overwhelming for just two of you?
Gary is the point person for special events, so I don't want to steal.
Yeah.
I'll go with diplomacy here. No, I'm just kidding. No, so I think that to Ryan and the previous coordinator before me's credit, the system that they've built for kind of running a tight planning timeline and achieving certain goals, certain milestones before a special event, allow for the process to be a little bit neater, especially when you have so many. I mean, not only do we have these two looming or potentially looming events, we have all of the other special events that are happening in the city. And post-COVID, everybody was very excited to come out of their homes and celebrate, and special events. We saw definitely an uptick in them, but also kind of the rust that the special events machine needed to dust off from the government's perspective, from the city's perspective. So how do we do it with two? Lots of coffee, but also that kind of reliance on that planning cycle, which when we say planning cycle, it starts about it could start about 2 months prior to the special event, where we work with the Office of Special Events, the city's Office of Special Events. We engage with the event organizer and make our contacts through them. We also, will engage our public safety partners to establish kind of a rhythm of what we are looking, what gaps they need, where we can provide that coordination role. Because mostly we have lots of city agencies, but they seem to all speak different languages. So, and that's always fun. We are the great translator of different acronyms. So, and then we move into our planning cycle, where we run tabletop exercises, we produce situational awareness documents, we review and propose contingency planning. So all of these things that we get to practice often, because there are so many special events within the city of Philadelphia, give us those opportunities to refine the process. as Ryan and I like to say, special events is a great playground and a safe playground to kind of test our new processes and our new tools. And we do that very often. To the credit of the unit, we really get to try things and see if they work out. And if they don't, we scrap it and we try again. The process that has been developed allows us to handle major special events, multiple major special events at once. So that's kind of my perspective of it, but I'll let Ryan, see how we do it. I'll defer to him for the final say.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of work if you let it be. And I say that kind of in jest, but it's still a lot of work for two people to do. But we're not doing it alone. We have help from other members of the office, to work on certain pieces of it. And if we really get burdened with multiple events, we can bring in more people. But what I was kind of alluding to was it wasn't always as efficient as it is now. And one of the first tasks that I was given as a program manager when I stepped into this role was understanding that we're always going to have certain events that are annual, and we're always pretty much going to staff for our mobile command post and that sort of posture. What can we do internally to make this process smoother for our own staff, less of a burden, both with the amount of hours for planning, the type of planning. So we made a lot of incremental shifts over the years that I think now are paying off in ways such as it allows us to handle more events at the same time and provide a level of service, at least planning wise, to more events at the same time, because we're doing it more efficiently and have a pretty standardized process for how we want to go about this. But I think we've also shifted the type of focus on the product that we deliver, whether it's an EAP, for example. The event action plan, the EAP that we used to develop, was really text heavy. It wasn't standardized into like an ICS format. And it was a lot to pull together, both on the planning side, and it was a lot to read if you were given this 2 or 3 days before an event. I mean, it was sometimes 100+ pages that were, op orders that were copy and pasted from different organizations. And so, just that in and of itself, switching from more of a loosely framed kind of narrative event action plan to let's take, the incident command system and the ICS forms, and let's start using these for our event action plans. And we can modify the ICS forms to our needs. But at the end of the day, fast forward, 2, 3, 4 years later, after we've tinkered with it for long enough, we have an ICS template for special events for Philadelphia that works pretty well. And I think Gary and I have the process down now where if it's a smaller or mid-sized type of event, we can get an EAP, if we have all the information available to us, done within an hour or two, or an event briefing, the shorter version, and a full EAP. We can have that done in easily within a week of 5 business days. And on the flip side, the end user, our consumers, from different public safety agencies and city agencies, now have a standardized format of an EAP where they know typically on page 4 or 5 I can find the information that I'm looking for. So all of that has helped us manage multiple special events more efficiently and make it less of a burden. Although I would say obviously it comes with a price, because I am white-haired now, and I wasn't that way years ago.
I want to hear it.
So the fact that Gary hasn't turned bright white like I have, I think is a testament to the planning process and the revisions that we've made.
I'm on track though, so it's fine. I'll be there in a little while.
So the whole ICS and NIMS methodologies, do you find that actually practically useful in your day-to-day work?
I do. I think, and again, using special events as a proving ground or a laboratory, right? We we started using ICS forms for special events, and that led itself to kind of get others in the office to see the value of it. And since then we've had some no notice incidents where instead of doing an incident action plan kind of the old way, having seen how well it worked for special events, an ICS form was used for a few major events. And then by the time COVID came around, we were using ICS forms every day for our incident action plans to carry us through one operational period of 24 hours. So each day for COVID, we were cranking out, an ICS based event action plan. So I would say, yes, it is useful, but I also like the fact that ICS allows you and encourages you to customize to your needs. So the EAP that we push out for special events doesn't look like the same EAP or IAP that we would use for a no notice incident. But Gary, I don't know if you had more to elaborate on there.
No, I mean, that's, I think it's ICS as a national standard with an asterisk that, at the top of all of our EAP forms, it says adapted for the city of Philadelphia. So I think they're really meant to be, they provide a great start, but it's just finding how they fit your area of operations best and what really works for you. So
I've had some students that are coming into the emergency management field with no practical experience, and they were curious about things that they could do to kind of start setting themselves apart. And I've directed them to the FEMA site and the independent study ICS classes, especially like 100, 200, 700, and 800. But is there anything else that you would recommend for somebody, maybe somebody who just got their bachelor's and is trying to get their foot in the door, things that they can do on their own without being part of an agency or having some sort of like corporation or anything to let them go to classes that they can do on their own to kind of build out their resume?
I have a couple things. I would say internships are always great. Gary and I are pretty much always recruiting interns. And I know we've had some from your program before, and we try to make it so that it's a good learning experience for the intern or the fellow, as we refer to them. It's a good fellowship experience. We obviously have a project that we would like to get, make progress on, but it's really meant to, provide a good look at what big city emergency management looks and feels like, at least here in Philadelphia. And that kind of comes from my experience of, I've had internships, not with the Red Cross, because that was a positive one, but I've had internships before where it was just kind of busy work and you walk away from it saying, what did I really get out of this, right? So if you know of a good, emergency management internship or disaster management or emergency communications or whatever kind of niche of OEM that you're looking to get into, see if you can intern somewhere. Two, I would say there's, in addition to the independent study courses through FEMA, there's some other courses available. And, I can follow up with JD or, send kind of the list that we give to our fellows. But I always forget what the acronym is, the National Consortium of Domestic Preparedness, I think it is. But there's participating organizations that make training available. And I know we, OEM, lean on that specifically through one offering they make available for special event management and contingency planning. So we try to host that here in Philadelphia every couple of years, that special event training curriculum. And anytime we have fellows, we make it available to them as well if we're hosting it here. And the third thing I'll say is, I wish I would have taken more advantage of it in college and other opportunities. But some of the soft skills, if you can practice them in undergrad, I think are always helpful. Things like public speaking, which I admittedly I'm not the best at, but I've come a long way, believe it or not. But I wish I would have practiced more in college and taken more opportunities to do public speaking. Things like how to successfully manage a meeting, starting on time, ending on time, putting a good agenda together, setting expectations, documenting that with notes. That's one thing that we kind of push on our fellows, and we've gotten pretty good feedback that it's not really taught in college very often. And it's something that you just, OJT, learning on the job, something I didn't know coming in as a program manager, but it makes a world of difference when you're trying to host a meeting, whether it's a tabletop exercise, so on and so forth. If you make good use of the time that you have set aside for executives, other program managers, whoever, it goes a long way with trying to get everybody back together for a second meeting. So those are a few things. And I would say if you have an interest in another kind of skill set, go ahead and explore that. If you think there's a benefit to your work in public safety. And some good examples that I've seen are people that have followed through on learning how to really properly use GIS tools and build really productive and engaging maps. Having somebody that can do that as a secondary skill set, I think is really helpful. We had another person in our office that loved radios, was a ham operator, really knew the radio world inside and out, and was the person that I'd always go to when my radio wouldn't work and I was about ready to throw it against the wall. And I think the other one, drones is another big thing too. If you have an interest in drones, go ahead and get your Part 107 license. Go start building that, that experience. It's becoming more and more sought after in the public safety community. So even if you're not a pilot, but you have a really good knowledge base in drones and the do's and don'ts and the policies behind it. And I'm sure there's other kind of skill sets that I'm not thinking of, but if you have an interest in that sort of a topic that might be related to emergency management, go ahead and see what certifications are out there, start chipping away at them, because I think that just makes you a little bit more attractive to a future employer. Hey, I know I had this background in emergency management. I've done the coursework. In addition to that, on my own initiative, I've also built out this whole skill set in GIS or how to use a drone or, pick a thing. But those are some initial thoughts.
You just made JD's night over there talking about
Absolutely.
drones and ham radios and GIS.
Yeah.
When you say that you guys are always looking for interns, do you post those on your LinkedIn pages?
It's posted on our website, phila.gov/ready, and there's
Okay.
a tab on there for jobs. And I'll double check with the manager that makes sure those are posted. I believe they are posted to LinkedIn, and we do a social media push usually on Twitter. But I think at a minimum, it's on our jobs page. But let me double check with our social media crew and the people that post that, so that I don't give you bad information. But I think, yes, they are typically posted on LinkedIn.
Because I believe I'm connected with both of you, and if I see you put intern posts on there, I'll push them to our student chapter.
Okay, yeah, I think pretty much the way our office handles it is if a program manager or one of our deputy directors or director have a project that would be a good fit for a program or for a fellow, we'll make that available for the upcoming semester. And I think Gary and I usually have a project, and usually one or two other program managers or other members of the office will have a project available. So it's not always the same fellowship. It may be different program areas for different semesters, but yeah, get in touch with us and let us know you're interested. We've had people contact us and say, keep me in mind, if something comes available in this field, and we let them know when something's posted. So.
Well, definitely. So when you have opportunities like that, do you have any remote options, or do students have to be in person?
It's whenever there's a fellow, they're paired with a mentor, whoever the project leader is. So it's the mentor's kind of discretion as far as whether the project is remote or in person or a hybrid. I think since COVID, I'm trying to think of circumstances, Gary, if it's been in person only. I think we've always pretty much done hybrid since COVID. Whereas before it was pretty much always in person. But
There definitely is benefit to that kind of, you hear the conversations in the hallways, you are there at the right time when something goes off and you're kind of a witness to it. But we've definitely, I think for the last 3 rounds of internships that I've been a part of, they have been hybrid. And one finished, I think one of our interns, the beginning half was hybrid and then needed to finish it off fully remote, and it works out. But as Ryan said, it's project dependent.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Well, I gotta thank y'all very much for coming tonight and giving us a very interesting talk. One bit of business is that Jen posted in our chat. So if you are just watching this on YouTube and you have missed the chat, we are working on plans for study groups and assistance with IAEM, CEM, and AEM certification packages. So if
Say that 3
anybody's,
times fast.
I know. So if anyone's interested, the link will be up on our website, and it will be down below if you're watching this on YouTube. So join us for a certification group study. Brian, Gary, thank you all very much for coming tonight. We all appreciate it very much.
Yeah, this was great. I really, really appreciate your time, especially till late on a weeknight.
Indeed.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.
yeah, we appreciate it.
Okay, well, everybody, stay safe out there. And next time we speak, I will be at the IAEM conference, and we'll see y'all next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.